The massive space station called Harmony Point floated in the darkness above the dead planet Kestrel Prime. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports, bringing delegates from dozens of worlds to what everyone hoped would be the most important meeting in galactic history. The station was huge, bigger than most cities, with gleaming metal corridors that stretched for miles and observation decks that looked out into the star-filled void. Commander Yuki Tanaka stood at one of those observation decks watching as another alien ship approached the station. She was alone, which was unusual for such an important event. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight military style, and she wore the standard gray and blue uniform of the Terran Marine Corps. The uniform looked simple compared to the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor that other species wore to important meetings. Behind her, she could hear the strange sounds of alien languages echoing through the corridors. The ethereals made musical chiming sounds when they spoke, while the massive Titan-born delegates created deep rumbling noises that shook the floor. The quick-moving Quicksilver race spoke so fast that their words sounded like buzzing insects. Yuki had been fighting aliens for most of her adult life, but this was different. Today she was supposed to help make peace with them instead of shooting at them. The thought made her smile slightly. Admiral Jimin Park had given her specific orders before she left Earth, but those orders were unlike anything she had received before. "Remember, Yuki," the Admiral had said during their final briefing, "we are not there to negotiate. We are there to observe and understand. Let them talk first. Let them show us who they really are." The Peace Summit had been 3 years in the making. For 3 long years, the galaxy had been split between 2 major groups. On one side was the Hegemony of Worlds, a collection of 12 alien species that believed in working together under strict rules and shared leadership. On the other side was the Free Systems Alliance, led by the warlike Vortan Empire, which believed that each world should be free to make its own choices without interference from others. The problem was that both sides wanted the same things: control of trade routes, access to rare minerals, and the right to expand their territory. Neither side was willing to give up what they saw as their rightful claims, and neither side trusted the other enough to share power. Humans had only been part of galactic civilization for 50 years, ever since they developed faster-than-light travel. In that short time, they had gained a reputation that made other species nervous. Human military tactics were unpredictable and brutal. They did not follow the established rules of galactic warfare. They used psychological warfare, surprise attacks, and strategies that other species found disturbing or dishonorable. Some species feared humans and wanted them destroyed. Others wanted humans as allies because of their military effectiveness. This made humans valuable to both sides of the conflict, but it also made them dangerous. No one knew which side humans would choose if war broke out. The main ceremony hall of Harmony Point was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above through transparent metal. In the center of the hall was a circular table with seats for representatives from every major species in the galaxy. Each seat was designed for the specific needs of different alien body types. The ethereals floated above their designated area in shimmering energy fields that kept their crystalline bodies stable in the station's artificial gravity. They looked like living prisms, bending light around them in beautiful patterns. But Yuki knew they were also one of the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. The Titan-born delegates sat in reinforced chairs that could support their massive weight. Each one was over 8 feet tall and built like living mountains of muscle and bone. Their skin was gray and rough like stone, and their eyes glowed with internal heat from the forges of their homeworld. The Quicksilver representatives were harder to see because they kept shifting between dimensions, appearing as silver blurs that occasionally solidified into humanoid shapes. They were fast in every way, fast-moving, fast-thinking, and fast to anger. Other species filled the remaining seats: the insectoid hive minds, the aquatic depth dwellers, the gaseous cloud dancers, and many others that Yuki had only read about in intelligence reports. When it came time for the human representative to enter, all conversation stopped. The aliens had expected a team of diplomats, cultural experts, and military advisors. Instead, they got one woman in a simple military uniform carrying nothing but a small data pad. Yuki walked to her assigned seat without looking left or right. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her every move. Some species communicated through scent, others through electromagnetic fields, and she could sense their confusion and curiosity washing over her like invisible waves. The ceremony began with the traditional greeting rituals of each species. The ethereals created a light show that painted rainbow colors across the dome ceiling. The Titanborn struck their chest plates with their fists in a thunderous rhythm that echoed through the hall. The Quicksilver delegates moved in complex patterns that hurt to watch directly. Each species presented their formal position on the conflict. The hegemony speakers talked about unity, cooperation, and the benefits of shared governance. They proposed complex treaties that would create joint control over disputed territories and resources. Their proposals were detailed and carefully planned with hundreds of pages of legal text and supporting documents. The Alliance representatives, led by the Vorthon war chief Kale Stormwind, spoke of freedom and independence. They wanted each species to control their own destiny without interference from galactic bureaucrats. Their proposals were simpler, but demanded significant territorial concessions from the hegemony worlds. Yuki listened to everything without speaking. She took notes on her datapad, but her notes were not about the proposals being presented. Instead, she wrote down observations about body language, voice patterns, and the emotional undertones of each speaker. She was reading the aliens like she would read an enemy force before a battle. As the hours passed, it became clear that the two sides were too far apart to reach an agreement. The hegemony wanted integration and shared control. The Alliance wanted independence and territorial expansion. Neither side was willing to compromise on their core principles. The tension in the room grew thicker with each presentation. Some species began making subtle threats. Others hinted at military buildups and defensive preparations. The careful diplomatic language could not hide the fact that both sides were preparing for war. The breaking point came when Kale Stormwind stood to respond to the hegemony's final proposal. He was an impressive figure, even by Vorthon standards. His species looked like a cross between humans and large predatory cats with golden fur, sharp claws, and eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. "You speak of unity," Kale said, his voice carrying the growling undertones of his species. "But what you offer is surrender. You want us to give up our ancient territories, our traditional hunting grounds, our sacred worlds, all for the promise of shared prosperity under your rule." He looked around the room, making eye contact with delegates from both sides. "The Vorthon Empire has never bowed to foreign masters, and we will not start now. Your proposals are an insult to warrior honor and a betrayal of everything our ancestors died to protect." The ethereal mediator Luxara Windwhisper tried to restore order by suggesting a recess, but Kale was not finished. "If this is the best that galactic diplomacy can offer," he continued, "then we are wasting our time here. The Alliance will not accept terms that amount to unconditional surrender disguised as peace." With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, followed by the other Alliance delegates. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the suddenly quiet hall. As the Alliance delegation left, Yuki finally looked up from her datapad. She had been silent through the entire first day of negotiations, but now she allowed herself a small smile. The real meeting was about to begin. The second day of the Peace Summit began with empty chairs where the Alliance delegates had sat. The massive ceremony hall felt different now, quieter but also more tense. The remaining hegemony representatives whispered among themselves in their various languages, creating a background hum of alien conversation that filled the space. Dr. Hana Kim watched from the observation deck above the main floor, her hands pressed against the transparent metal barrier. She was a xenobiologist who had spent most of her career studying alien cultures, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The other human observers had expected the Alliance walkout, but they were all waiting to see what Yuki would do next. Hana knew Yuki's reputation from the military reports she had read. During the Proxima campaign, a single human regiment under Yuki's command had held off 3 full Titanborn battle groups for 6 months. The Titanborn were known throughout the galaxy as unstoppable warriors, but somehow the humans had not only stopped them, but forced them to retreat. The battle reports from that campaign had changed how every species in the galaxy thought about human military capabilities. Then there was the Sigma incident, where Yuki had personally led a boarding action against a Quicksilver mothership. The Quicksilver were supposed to be impossible to catch because of their dimensional shifting abilities, but Yuki had somehow predicted their movement patterns and captured their most advanced vessel. The Quicksilver had been forced to negotiate for its return, giving humans their first major diplomatic victory. But this was different from a military campaign. Here, Yuki was supposed to be a diplomat, not a warrior. The problem was that no one, including Hana, knew exactly what that meant when it came to human diplomatic strategy. The ethereal mediator, Luxara Windwhisper, called the session to order with a musical chime that resonated through the hall. Her crystalline body caught the light from the dome above and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the walls. "We gather, again in the hope of peace," she said, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones of her species. "Though we are fewer in number than yesterday, perhaps we can make progress with those who remain committed to dialogue." The various hegemony representatives began to speak again, but their words were different now. Without the Alliance delegates present, they seemed more willing to discuss their real concerns. The Depth Dwellers mentioned problems with their ocean worlds becoming too warm. The Cloud Dancers talked about stellar radiation affecting their gas giant homes. The insectoid hive minds described resource shortages that were threatening their colony worlds. Yuki listened to everything while making notes on her datapad, but she still did not speak. Other delegates began to glance in her direction more frequently as the morning progressed. Some looked curious, others appeared nervous, and a few seemed almost hostile. During the midday break, several alien delegates approached Yuki directly. A Titanborn named Gorak Ironforge spoke first, his deep voice making the floor vibrate slightly. "Human warrior," he said, using the formal address his species preferred. "Your silence puzzles us. Do humans have no opinion on these matters?" Yuki looked up at the massive alien, meeting his glowing eyes without flinching. "Humans have many opinions," she replied calmly. "But we prefer to understand a situation completely before we act." A Quicksilver delegate flickered into view beside them, its form shifting between solid and translucent. "Understanding is overrated," it buzzed in the rapid speech patterns of its species. "Action brings results. Hesitation brings defeat." "Sometimes," Yuki agreed, "and sometimes action without understanding brings disaster." The Quicksilver seemed puzzled by this response and flickered away to rejoin its group. Gorak studied Yuki for a long moment, before nodding slowly and returning to his seat. When the afternoon session began, Luxara called upon each remaining delegation to present their position on how to proceed without the Alliance. Most species suggested either postponing the summit until the Alliance could be convinced to return, or moving forward with agreements that would exclude the Alliance worlds entirely. Finally, Luxara turned to Yuki. The entire hall fell silent as every alien eye focused on the lone human representative. "Commander Tanaka," the ethereal mediator said, "we have heard from all other delegations. What is humanity's position on how we should proceed?" Yuki stood slowly, her simple military uniform stark against the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by the other delegates. She walked to the center of the hall, stopping beside the circular table where she could be seen clearly by everyone present. "Humans don't negotiate peace," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall. "We create it." The statement sent ripples of confusion through the assembly. Several delegates began speaking at once in their various languages, creating a cacophony of alien sounds. Luxara chimed for order, and the hall gradually became quiet again. "Could you clarify what you mean by that statement?" Luxara asked, her crystalline form shifting colors slightly in what Hana recognized as a sign of puzzlement among her species. "I mean that talking about peace and creating peace are two different things," Yuki replied. "You have spent 3 days discussing what you want from each other, but you have not addressed what each of you actually needs." Gorak leaned forward, in his reinforced chair, causing it to creak under his weight. "What is the difference between wants and needs, human?" Instead of answering directly, Yuki began asking questions. She asked the Depth Dwellers about the temperature changes in their oceans, but not in the general terms they had used earlier. She wanted specific data, temperature ranges, affected areas, timeline of changes, and impact on their food sources. She asked the cloud dancers about the stellar radiation affecting their worlds, but again she wanted details. Which types of radiation, intensity levels, duration of exposure, and effects on their atmospheric composition. She asked the hive minds about their resource shortages, requesting information about specific materials, consumption rates, current reserves, and projected depletion timelines. Each question seemed random and disconnected from the others, but Hana began to see a pattern emerging. Yuki was not asking about political positions or territorial claims. She was conducting what looked like a scientific survey of each species' actual living conditions. The alien delegates grew increasingly uncomfortable as Yuki's questions became more specific and detailed. Some species were reluctant to share information they considered sensitive or strategic. Others seemed genuinely puzzled about why a human would be interested in their environmental conditions rather than their political demands. As the afternoon wore on, Yuki's questioning revealed problems that went far beyond the territorial disputes that had supposedly caused the galactic crisis. The depth dwellers were facing ecological collapse as their ocean worlds warmed beyond the tolerance levels of their biology. The cloud dancers were being slowly poisoned by radiation from their aging sun. The hive minds were running out of the rare minerals needed to maintain their technology. Similar problems affected every species present, but none of them had mentioned these issues during the formal negotiations. Instead, they had focused on abstract concepts like sovereignty, territorial rights, and political independence. Near the end of the day, a human intelligence officer named Jin-Woo Lee arrived at the summit station. He was met at the docking port by station security and escorted directly to the ceremony hall, carrying a sealed container of data storage devices. Yuki reviewed the contents of the container briefly, reading through files on her datapad, while the alien delegates watched nervously. Whatever information Jin-Woo had brought was clearly significant, but Yuki gave no indication of what it contained. Finally, she looked up at the assembled delegates and made an announcement that would change everything. The summit will reconvene in 12 hours, she said calmly. At that time, humanity will provide our demonstration of how peace is created rather than negotiated. The alien delegates erupted into excited conversation as Yuki gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. Some species sent urgent communications to their home governments, while others huddled together in worried discussion groups. Hana watched from the observation deck as Yuki disappeared into the station corridors. She had worked with enough military personnel to recognize the signs. Yuki had just shifted from observation mode to action mode. Whatever humanity had planned for tomorrow would either save the galaxy from war or push it over the edge into the largest conflict in recorded history. As the various delegations dispersed to their quarters for the night, one question echoed through the corridors of Harmony Point in dozens of alien languages. What exactly did humans mean by a demonstration of peace? 12 hours later, the alien delegates returned to the ceremony hall to find it completely transformed. Where before there had been simple seating arrangements and a central speaking area, now there were holographic displays surrounding every surface. Streams of data flowed across transparent screens that floated in the air, showing real-time information from across the galaxy. The circular table at the center of the hall had been replaced with a sophisticated command center that looked more like a military installation than a diplomatic meeting room. Multiple workstations displayed star charts, resource maps, and communication networks that connected dozens of worlds. Commander Yuki Tanaka stood at the center of it all, no longer alone. Through quantum entanglement communication systems, she was connected to human military and civilian personnel throughout known space. The delegates could see and hear other humans appearing as holograms around the room, each one representing a different aspect of humanity's galactic presence. Dr. Hana Kim watched from the observation deck as the alien delegates filed into the transformed hall. She could see the confusion and concern on their faces as they tried to understand what they were looking at. The ethereals shifted colors rapidly, indicating high levels of stress. The Titan-born delegates moved cautiously, their warrior instincts, clearly triggered by the military appearance of the setup. Luxara Windwhisper floated to her mediator position, but even she seemed uncertain about how to proceed. The harmonic tones of her voice carried notes of anxiety as she spoke. "Commander Tanaka, this appears to be quite different from our usual diplomatic procedures. Could you explain what we are observing?" Yuki activated the central display, causing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy to appear above the command center. Thousands of points of light represented star systems, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Different colors indicated which areas were controlled by the hegemony, the alliance, or remained neutral. "What you are observing," Yuki said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's enhanced audio systems, "is the real situation in our galaxy, not the political fiction that has been presented during these negotiations." She gestured to the holographic map, and certain areas began to pulse with warning indicators. For the past 50 years, humanity has been watching, learning, and gathering information about every species, every world, and every conflict in known space. We have not been passive observers. We have been active students. The first revelation came as Yuki began highlighting specific star systems on the galactic map. Each highlighted system showed detailed information about its inhabitants, resources, military capabilities, and current problems. "The Ethereal Collective," she said, focusing the display on a cluster of crystal blue star systems, "officially controls 47 worlds and maintains a population of 12 billion individuals. What your delegation has not mentioned is that your primary sun, Luminara, is entering the final stages of its stellar life cycle. Your scientists estimate that it will become uninhabitable within 200 standard years." The ethereal delegates shifted from blue to deep purple, a color that Hana knew indicated shock and fear among their species. Luxara's harmonic voice carried undertones of distress as she responded. "How could you possibly know about our stellar surveys? That information is classified at the highest levels of our government." Instead of answering directly, Yuki continued her presentation. The galactic map shifted focus to the massive red systems controlled by the Titanborn. The Titanborn Federation controls the largest industrial base in the galaxy, with manufacturing capabilities that exceed all other species combined. However, your homeworld's core temperature has been dropping for the past century. Your planetary forges require specific rare earth elements to maintain their heat, and your current reserves will be exhausted within 50 years. Gorak Ironforge stood abruptly, his chair groaning under the sudden movement. His eyes glowed brighter with anger and alarm. "Impossible. Our core temperature data is stored in the most secure facilities on Ironheart. No outsider has access to that information." Yuki moved to the next display, showing the dimensional space occupied by the Quicksilver Confederacy. The Quicksilver maintain the most advanced transportation network in the galaxy through their dimensional folding technology. Unfortunately, your species is facing a reproductive crisis. Your birth rates have declined by 60% over the past 2 generations because you lack sufficient dimensional space for your breeding protocols. The Quicksilver delegates flickered rapidly between dimensions, their forms becoming increasingly unstable with agitation. One of them managed to solidify long enough to speak in their rapid, buzzing language. "These are state secrets of the highest order. If humans have somehow penetrated our dimensional barriers to obtain this information, it constitutes an act of war against our sovereignty." "We have not penetrated anything," Yuki replied calmly. "We have simply been paying attention to what you do rather than what you say." She activated another display that showed trade patterns, resource flows, and economic data spanning decades. Every species in this galaxy broadcasts information about their true situation through their actions, even when they try to hide it with diplomatic language. The holographic display showed how ethereal colony ships had been quietly searching for new star systems, focusing on areas with young, stable suns. It revealed how Titanborn mining operations had increasingly targeted rare Earth deposits, often in territories claimed by other species. It demonstrated how Quicksilver expansion had focused on areas with dimensional instabilities that could be exploited for breeding space. "Your actions tell us what you need," Yuki explained, "even when your words tell us what you want." The difference between needs and wants is the key to understanding this conflict. Minister Sojin Choi appeared as a hologram beside Yuki, her image being transmitted from the human embassy on the neutral world of New Geneva. She was an elegant woman in her 50s who had served as humanity's primary diplomatic representative for the past decade. What Commander Tanaka is demonstrating, Minister Choi said, addressing the alien delegates directly, is that this war is not about political philosophy or territorial rights. It is about species survival. Each of your civilizations is facing existential threats that your governments have not shared with your populations or your allies. Captain Minho Park appeared as another hologram, his military uniform indicating his position with the human colonial defense force. The political positions taken by both the hegemony and the alliance are responses to these survival pressures, not causes of the conflict. The hegemony seeks unity because cooperation is necessary for species that are facing extinction. The alliance demands independence because freedom of action is required for species that need to expand or adapt quickly. Yuki reactivated the central display, but this time it showed something that made every alien delegate fall silent. The map displayed human settlements, research stations, and resource extraction facilities throughout the galaxy. There were far more of them than any species had realized. Over the past 50 years, Yuki said, humanity has established a presence in every major star system, every important trade route, and every strategically significant location in the galaxy. We have not done this for conquest or territorial expansion. We have done it to understand the challenges facing galactic civilization. The display zoomed in on specific human installations, showing their purposes and capabilities. Research stations, studying stellar mechanics, were positioned near aging stars. Mining operations were extracting rare minerals from asteroid fields in unclaimed space. Agricultural colonies were developing new food production methods on marginal worlds. Dr. Hyunwoo Jang appeared as a hologram, his title identifying him as humanity's chief xenoanthropologist. Every species goes through predictable development phases as they mature from planetary to galactic civilizations. Most species face similar challenges: resource depletion, environmental changes, population pressures, and the need to expand beyond their homeworlds. He gestured to data displays, showing historical patterns across multiple species. What makes this situation unique is that your species are all facing these challenges simultaneously, and you are competing for the same limited solutions. This creates the conditions for a civilization-ending war. Yuki stepped forward, drawing the attention of every delegate back to herself. Humans have been where you are now. We have faced extinction, resource depletion, environmental collapse, and the temptation to solve our problems through conquest. We survived these challenges, but barely, and we learned from the experience. She activated a new display that showed detailed solutions to each species' core problems. For the ethereals, there were stellar engineering techniques that could extend their sun's life by thousands of years. For the Titan-born, there were locations of mineral-rich asteroids in unclaimed space that contained enough rare earths to power their forges for centuries. For the Quicksilver, there were dimensional folding methods that could create new breeding spaces without requiring territorial expansion. We have solutions to your problems, Yuki said simply. All of them. The silence in the hall was complete. Even the background hum of the station's life support system seemed muted as the alien delegates processed what they had. The revelation that humanity had solutions to every species' survival problems sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates, but Commander Yuki Tanaka was far from finished. As the alien representatives struggled to process what they had learned, she activated another series of displays that would completely shatter their understanding of human intentions and capabilities. What you have seen so far, Yuki said, her voice cutting through the whispered conversations filling the hall, is only the surface level of human involvement in galactic affairs. For 50 years you have viewed us as unpredictable newcomers who fight wars differently than established civilizations. This perception has been deliberately maintained because it serves our actual purpose. The holographic displays around the hall shifted to show a new type of information. Detailed analyses of every major military conflict, political crisis, and diplomatic incident that had occurred since humans entered galactic civilization. Each event was connected by lines of data, showing cause and effect relationships that had previously been invisible. Dr. Hana Kim leaned forward against the observation deck barrier, her scientific training helping her recognize the pattern emerging from the data. What looked like random human military actions over the decades was actually a carefully orchestrated strategy designed to prevent exactly the kind of galactic war that now threatened to engulf known space. Captain Minho Parks, hologram, stepped forward to address the increasingly agitated alien delegates. His colonial defense uniform bore the insignia of someone who had spent years dealing with frontier conflicts between different species. Every human military action over the past 50 years has been calculated to serve a single strategic goal, he explained: the prevention of large-scale galactic warfare through the careful management of regional conflicts and the demonstration of consequences for aggressive expansion. The display focused on the Proxima campaign, where Yuki had led human forces against the Titan-born battle groups. Instead of showing it as a territorial dispute, the new analysis revealed it as a carefully planned demonstration. The Proxima campaign was not about controlling that star system, Captain Park continued. It was about proving to the Titan-born leadership that expansion through military conquest would be too costly to sustain. We deliberately chose a defensive position that would maximize Titan-born casualties while minimizing strategic value. Gorak Ironforge's eyes flared brighter as he processed this information. You are saying that hundreds of my people died in a battle that was meaningless to you? No, Yuki replied firmly. I am saying that hundreds of your people died in a battle that prevented millions of deaths in a larger war. The Titan-born military command learned from Proxima that humans could not be conquered easily, which removed the temptation to solve your resource problems through expansion into human space. She shifted the display to show the Sigma incident, where humans had captured a Quicksilver mothership. Similarly, the Sigma operation was not piracy or territorial aggression. It was a message to the Quicksilver Confederacy that their hit-and-run tactics against civilian shipping could be countered effectively. The Quicksilver delegates flickered more rapidly between dimensions, their forms becoming increasingly difficult to focus on as their agitation grew. One managed to stabilize long enough to speak in their buzzing language. You manipulated us into changing our expansion patterns through military deception. We guided you toward expansion patterns that did not require conflict with other species, Yuki corrected. Your people needed dimensional space for reproduction, but you were trying to acquire it by raiding existing territories. We demonstrated that this approach would fail, which encouraged your scientists to develop the dimensional folding techniques you now use to create new breeding spaces. Lieutenant Colonel Jun Seo Kim appeared as a new hologram, his military intelligence background evident from the tactical displays that surrounded his projection. Every species in this galaxy has been unconsciously shaped by human strategic interventions over the past 5 decades. We have prevented 17 potential wars, stopped 12 genocidal campaigns, and redirected 43 territorial expansion attempts. The scope of human manipulation became clear as the display showed incident after incident where human actions had altered the course of galactic history. Trade disputes that could have escalated to warfare were resolved through human mediation. Resource conflicts were diffused by human discoveries of alternative materials. Territorial disputes were settled through human offers of neutral arbitration. This is impossible. Luxara's harmonic voice carried notes of disbelief and fear. No, single species could predict and prevent so many conflicts across such a vast area of space. You are correct, Yuki acknowledged. No single species could accomplish this through normal diplomatic or military means. Humans succeeded because we used a completely different approach to galactic citizenship. She activated the central display again, showing the galaxy-wide network of human installations, monitoring stations, and research facilities. But this time, the display revealed the true purpose of each facility. Humans do not think in terms of winning or losing conflicts, she explained. We think in terms of preventing conflicts from occurring. Every human installation in the galaxy serves multiple purposes: scientific research, resource extraction, and strategic monitoring. Dr. Hyunwoo Jang's hologram gestured to displays showing human research into stellar mechanics, planetary geology, and biological adaptation. We study the long-term challenges facing every species so that we can help them find solutions before those challenges become survival crises that lead to war. Minister Sojin Choi added her perspective from the diplomatic arena. Traditional galactic diplomacy focuses on managing conflicts after they arise. Human strategy focuses on eliminating the root causes of conflicts before they can develop into crises. The alien delegates were beginning to understand the true scope of human involvement in their affairs. But Yuki had one more revelation that would completely transform their understanding of the current situation. "What I have shown you so far explains our past actions," she said. "Now I will show you our current contingency planning." The displays shifted to show detailed tactical projections of what would happen if the Galactic War actually began. The analysis was so comprehensive and detailed that it clearly represented years of preparation and planning. "If this summit fails, and the hegemony and alliance go to war," Yuki continued, "humans will not choose a side. Instead, we will implement what we call the pacification protocol." The tactical displays showed how human forces would systematically target the infrastructure that made large-scale interstellar warfare possible. Space lanes would be blocked by strategically placed asteroid fields. Communication networks would be disrupted by electromagnetic pulse weapons. Resource extraction facilities would be disabled by precision strikes that avoided casualties but prevented material production. Within 6 months of the war beginning, Lieutenant Colonel Junseo Kim explained, human actions would reduce the galaxy's capacity for large-scale warfare by 70%. Neither the hegemony nor the alliance would have the resources to maintain their military operations. The projection showed that the war would not end through victory by either side, but through exhaustion and inability to continue fighting. Both coalitions would be forced to negotiate peace simply because they would lack the means to wage war effectively. "You would cripple the entire galaxy to prevent us from fighting?" Gorak asked, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and anger. "We would temporarily disable the galaxy's capacity for self-destruction," Yuki corrected. "All damaged infrastructure would be repaired and improved once peace agreements were in place. No worlds would be permanently harmed, no civilian populations would be targeted, and no species would be driven to extinction." The ethereal mediator, Luxara, shifted through a rainbow of colors as she processed the implications of what she had learned. "This is beyond anything we have encountered in galactic history. You are describing a level of strategic planning and resource allocation that suggests humans think about interstellar relations in fundamentally different ways than other species." "That is correct," confirmed Dr. Hyunwoo Jang. "Humans approach galactic citizenship as a responsibility rather than an opportunity. We believe that advanced civilizations have an obligation to help prevent other civilizations from making the same mistakes that nearly destroyed us." The silence that followed was different from the shocked quiet that had greeted earlier revelations. This was the silence of beings trying to completely reshape their understanding of reality. Finally, the Vorthon war chief Kael Stormwind entered the hall, having returned to the station during the night. His golden fur was darker than usual, indicating high stress levels, and his predatory eyes swept the transformed ceremony hall before focusing on Yuki. "I have been listening to these proceedings from my ship," he said, his growling voice carrying across the hall, "and I have one question that must be answered before we can proceed." He stepped closer to the central command area, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "If humans..." Commander Yuki Tanaka's response to Kael Stormwind's challenge created a moment of perfect silence in the transformed ceremony hall. The Vorthon war chief's question had struck to the heart of everything the assembled delegates had learned about human intentions and capabilities. Now, as they waited for her to elaborate, the future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. "Some lessons can only be learned through experience," Yuki repeated, stepping closer to where Kael stood. "And some growth can only happen through choice. Humans learned this during our own species' adolescence, when we nearly destroyed ourselves. Multiple times before finally developing the wisdom to match our technology, she gestured to the holographic displays surrounding them, which shifted to show images of Earth's history. Ancient wars, environmental disasters, nuclear conflicts, and near-extinction events that had shaped human development over millennia. Every species goes through what we call the adolescence phase, she continued, the period when a civilization gains advanced technology, but has not yet learned to use it responsibly. Most species either destroy themselves during this phase or emerge from it as mature civilizations capable of contributing to galactic stability. Dr. Hyun-Woo Jung's hologram stepped forward to provide the scientific context. We have studied the development patterns of 47 different species across the galaxy. The adolescence phase typically lasts between 50 and 200 years, during which civilizations must learn to balance individual survival instincts with collective responsibility. The displays showed comparative data from multiple species, illustrating how each had faced similar challenges during their transition from planetary to galactic civilizations. Wars over resources, territorial expansion conflicts, environmental crises, and social upheavals were common elements in every species' development. The current galactic crisis, Dr. Jang explained, represents the collective adolescence of your civilization group. You have all developed advanced individual technologies and capabilities, but you have not yet learned to function as a mature galactic community. Luxara Windwhisper's crystalline form shifted through several color patterns before settling on a deep blue that indicated profound contemplation. You are suggesting that this entire conflict is a natural part of our species' development and that human intervention was designed to guide us through this phase rather than prevent it entirely. Exactly, confirmed Minister Sojin Choi, her diplomatic experience evident in how she addressed the complex political implications. Premature intervention would have prevented your species from learning the lessons necessary for genuine maturity. We could have solved your immediate problems 50 years ago, but that would have created dependency rather than growth. Captain Minho Park added the military perspective. True peace cannot be imposed from outside. It must be chosen by those who will live under its conditions. Our role has been to ensure that when you face the choice between war and peace, peace would be the rational option. Kale's predatory eyes studied Yuki for a long moment before he spoke again. And now you believe we are ready to make that choice? Believe you are ready to understand what that choice actually means, Yuki replied. Which is why we are here today, not with threats or ultimatums, but with solutions and opportunities. She activated the central display one final time, but instead of showing tactical projections or crisis analyses, it displayed something entirely different, a comprehensive plan for galactic cooperation that addressed every species' needs while creating new possibilities for growth and development. Humans propose the establishment of the Galactic Maturation Council, she announced, a cooperative body dedicated to helping species transition from individual survival to collective prosperity. The plan that unfolded on the holographic displays was elegant in its simplicity and revolutionary in its scope. Instead of the rigid hierarchies proposed by the hegemony or the chaotic competition favored by the alliance, the Council would operate on principles of managed cooperation and strategic mutual aid. Lieutenant Colonel Jun Seo Kim explained the EZU operational structure. Each species contributes their greatest strengths to solve other species' greatest challenges. The Ethereal's energy manipulation technology helps the Titanborn develop cleaner and more efficient planetary forges. The size Quicksilver's dimensional folding capabilities aid ethereal colonization efforts by making interstellar travel more efficient. The Titanborn's manufacturing expertise supports Quicksilver population expansion by producing the specialized equipment needed for dimensional breeding protocols. The displays showed how this cooperative approach would work in practice. Ethereal energy technology could not only help the Titanborn, but also address the stellar radiation problems affecting the Cloud Dancers and provide power solutions for the hive mind's expanding colonies. Titanborn manufacturing capabilities could produce the specialized habitats needed by aquatic species, the dimensional anchors required by the Quicksilver, and the environmental processors needed for terraforming projects. Dr. Hyun-Woo Jang provided. The theoretical foundation. This approach transforms competition for scarce resources into collaboration for abundant solutions. Instead of fighting over existing territories and materials, species work together to create new possibilities for expansion and development. What role do humans play in this arrangement? Asked Gorak, his massive frame leaning forward with interest. You have demonstrated superior strategic capabilities and extensive knowledge of our individual needs. Humans serve as coordinators and contingency planners, Yuki explained. We help identify potential problems before they become crises, facilitate communication between species with different cultural and biological needs, and maintain the strategic perspective necessary for long-term stability. Admiral Jimin Park appeared as a new hologram, his senior military rank evident from the insignia on his uniform and the deference shown by other human officers. Humanity's role is not leadership through dominance, but service through expertise. We become the galaxy's strategic planning department and peacekeeping force, but only with the consent and cooperation of all member species. The Vorthan war chief studied the proposed structure carefully, his predatory instincts evaluating it for hidden traps or disadvantages. This council arrangement addresses our immediate survival needs, but what prevents it from becoming another form of imperial control? What stops humans from using their coordinator role to manipulate other species for their own benefit? Minister So-Jin Choi smiled at the question, clearly having anticipated this concern. The same thing that has prevented us from using our current strategic advantages for conquest or dominance. It serves no useful purpose. Human security and prosperity are best served by a stable, cooperative galaxy where all species can thrive. She gestured to displays showing human colonies and installations throughout known space. We already have access to all the resources and territory we need for our civilization's development. We gain nothing from controlling other species and lose nothing from helping them achieve their own potential. The logic was compelling, but Kale pressed further. And if a species chooses not to participate in this council, if some worlds prefer independence to cooperation, then they remain independent, Yuki answered simply. Participation in the council is voluntary, and non-members retain full sovereignty over their internal affairs. The only requirement is that they do not interfere with the cooperative efforts of member species. This answer seemed to satisfy even the most independence-minded delegates. The Quicksilver representatives solidified into clearer forms, indicating reduced stress levels. The Cloud Dancer's gaseous forms became more stable and organized. Even the suspicious hive minds showed signs of interest through subtle changes in their compound eye patterns. Dr. Hana Kim watched from the observation deck as the mood in the hall shifted from suspicion and fear to cautious optimism. The alien delegates were beginning to see the proposed council not as a threat to their autonomy, but as a solution to problems they had been unable to solve independently. The formal vote was conducted according to traditional galactic protocols, with each species casting their decision through their preferred method of democratic expression. The ethereals created harmonic resonances that indicated unanimous approval. The Titan-born struck their chest plates in rhythmic patterns that signaled agreement. The Quicksilver flickered between dimensions in synchronized sequences that represented consensus. One by one, every species present voted to establish the Galactic Maturation Council, with its first headquarters to be located on Harmony Point, the station that had been intended to host a peace negotiation but instead witnessed the birth of a new form of galactic civilization. As the voting concluded, Kyle approached Yuki directly, extending his clawed hand in the traditional Vorthan gesture of respect between warriors. You have given us something we did not know we needed, the chance to grow beyond what we were without losing what made us strong. Yuki accepted the gesture, gripping Kale's clawed hand firmly. That is what mature civilizations do for each other. They help each other grow while respecting each other's nature. 5 years later, the Galactic Maturation Council had become the primary peacekeeping and development organization